The job as an investigator. As an investigator, your job is to find details associated with the suspicious crime. It's the fact that Bitcoin is still the most widely used cryptocurrency today to facilitate cybercrime, both on the darknet and otherwise. So we will focus on Bitcoin and how we will trace a sample transaction. We will look at a sample case. So as an investigator, your job is actually to find all the entities related to that particular crime. Hostname, IP address, email address, in order to find out who is behind the scam or the crime. Our job is also to document all the findings, which can help us make the case. So we do not rely on expensive software. We should know how to do this kind of tracing ourselves as well. So we will look at how we will look at how to validate the address and confirm the address balance. And we will look at different tools which we can use to find similarities in the crime. Okay, so we start by validating the address. We have a suspicious address on the Bitcoin blockchain. So there is a tool which will allow us to check the address to find out if that particular address is a valid address or not. We don't know. Sometimes there is an address which might not be a valid Bitcoin address. So the first thing we do is to figure out if it is actually a valid address or not. So then we confirm the address balance. We will put the address balance in and see what is actually going on with the transaction. So we see that there are multiple addresses. So there is another tool as well, which is called Betreff. This allows us to, if you want a user-friendly view, we can just use this tool, which will allow us to see, we're still trying to confirm the transaction. So we put in that address, and we can see the date and the amount which is sent, and what the balance is. So this is more of a user-friendly tool. If you don't understand the more complicated blockchain explorers, you can use this tool. So in this case, we see that we have a few different dates, and you see that amount there's a minus amount, and there is the remaining balance. Okay, so the Bitcoin address report. Bitcoin Who is another tool that will show us more information about the particular crime. We see that we see the current balance. I'll show you here. We can see that this is the address, and this is the name of the wallet, which is in hexadecimal format. We see the current balance. So, and here we see the number of transactions. We see the first transaction, and we see the last transaction here. So we also see that the website appears 9 times. So the total received amount on this address, we can see here. And we also see the last transaction IP. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 IPs that are involved in relaying this transaction. Okay. So this is a useful tool. Yeah. By checking that address, we found that address appears on multiple websites that have been involved in the scam. So from here, we already have a lot more information about what is going on. Okay, so hashxp.org. Using that service, we can actually link transactions together and filter out the most common senders and the related receivers. So we see the four most common senders and 4 most common receivers and the 2 most common sending siblings and the 7 most common receiving siblings. So using hashxp, we can find out more about the related transactions. So the address we are checking is actually here, as you can see. Okay, then we have the famous Bitcoin blockchain explorer. This is the most used program, actually, tool. Because every transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain will be recorded on the public blockchain. So we can also see the transaction here, the total received amount, and the final balance. Okay, so as an investigator, we need to find out even more information about the related domains. So what is actually passive DNS? Passive DNS is a database that saves all the DNS lookups. If, for example, some malware have been using an address, sometimes the attackers change the DNS, which is used only on that specific malware campaign. Then after that, they will change back again to try to obfuscate the domain which they used for relaying or delivering the malware. So they try to temporarily use a specific DNS name, then they will change back. For example, here. So, but when we have this passive DNS database, we can go back and look at which malware was actually using that domain back in time. Okay. Mnemonic Passive DNS Service, that is a service which provides us with a database containing the DNS records of the IP addresses. So, yeah. Okay, in this particular case, we see that this domain was used in the malware campaign. So we see that last transaction, the date which it was, and the A record indicates that malicious websites has been used for the scam. So from that, we found out that the A record points to a specific DNS address, which appears 10 times. So why is this important? It's important because we can relate the Bitcoin crime to a specific host name. So we know that this malware has been delivered from this, could have been delivered from this domain. We don't know for sure, but our job is to try to find out. Okay, So we checked who is the record. In this example, we are checking this address, which appeared 10 times in the passive DNS report. And we saw that the domain is hosted on this IP, which also hosts 2 other sites. So if we want, we can also contact the abuse department. So we know that this domain belongs to this person who is a developer of Bitcoin mining software. So this raises a number of questions. Did the malicious Bitcoin address relay funds using one of those servers? Or was this person involved in the crime or not? We don't know. Okay, so we will come back to that. BGP View is another tool which we can use to find out who is the ISP of that particular IP address. Okay, so when we are working with forensics, we will try to find the related domains. So what we do is we take the Bitcoin address and use the onion scan tool. The onion scan tool will actually scan the darknet for the darknet address to see if that Bitcoin address is used in that domain or not. So onion scan looks for more things like it will look for the most common cryptocurrency clients, and it will also extract the Bitcoin address. It will find which email addresses are there, and it will look at the images on the darknet site, and it will try to find out the metadata. So many times scammers on darknet, they forget to remove the EXIF information in the image. The EXIF information in the image can contain the GPS location, which is bad for the attacker. From there, you can actually pinpoint from where the exact location the attacker operated that darknet market or that scam. So using that tool, we can also look for darknet sites to see if we have a Bitcoin address, if it's been involved in the darknet on that site. Okay, so search engine investigation. So when we found that the domain we had was the developer behind that. Well, he's a Bitcoin developer. He calls himself -JR. So we tried to find more information about him on the social media. So just Google him, and we will see more about him. So we also checked that on Facebook and LinkedIn. We also found more information about that person. But still, we do not have enough evidence to conclude whether he was intentionally involved in that crime or not. But our indication points to that one of his domains was used to facilitate that cybercrime. Okay, so MX Toolbox. We also took that IP, which we knew was involved in cybercrime, and looked it up on MX Toolbox. And that gives us some information that that particular IP was already on a blacklist. So, yeah, here we see the blacklist. So that means that the scam has been, well, it can indicate that it has been delivered using a mail server, which later on blacklisted. Somebody reported it as a scam, then it became blacklisted. Okay, SpyTox, that is another tool. We can actually search for persons. It's like Yellow Pages. SpyTox will give us information on possible persons who has a specific email address. So that's another tool we can use to aid the investigation. Okay, so identifying the wallet. So we can use a tool which is called Wallet Explorer. It uses a basic algorithm to determine the addresses and link them. So if we have an address, we can know if it has been spent in another transaction or not. It will link possible transactions together. So and that means two transactions or addresses actually they could be part of the same wallet. Yeah, same example. Here we have the address, we have the date, and we have the amount that is sent and received, and you can check each transaction. Okay. Yeah, it is possible that the suspect is using multiple wallets as well. Often there are multiple addresses which are generated from one single wallet. Because most crypto exchanges can generate a new unique address which will link to the same wallet. So even if the attacker is using a new unique address, it belongs to the same wallet. So Wallet Explorer, the guy who made Wallet Explorer actually now works for this company called Chain Analysis. Okay, the oxt.me, that is another tool we can use to look up the Bitcoin address. And the benefit of using this tool is that it will actually give us a graph, which will show us the incoming and outgoing transactions. So, yeah, here is a possible wallet name. Yeah, the information is basically the same, which we will find in the Blockchain Explorer, but here we can have a visualization of it. So it could be useful if you want to use that in a report, case report, and you can visualize the crime. So it also gives us the dates, so we can see when that activity was higher and when it was lower. Okay. And we also have altcoins, which are actually other coins or cryptocurrencies. One of them is Digibyte. It is used as an example only. So what we do is we search for the address on Digibyte's blockchain explorer, which gives us that this address belongs to the Betreff exchange. And the Betreff exchange contains this amount of Digibyte. So, and we also have the addresses which correspond to that wallet. Yeah, so sometimes a larger wallet is used by an exchange. And from there we can know that if the attacker is sending altcoin or some coin to an exchange, we can go directly to the exchange and get the information about the user from the exchange, because most exchanges will ask for identification documents. Yeah, so decentralized exchanges, most so-called decentralized exchanges are not actually decentralized. They are actually hybrid exchanges, which means that they have a coin gateway which connects to another blockchain. So the coin gateway, which means that if you're sending Bitcoin to a decentralized exchange, it is actually not decentralized. It is using a coin gateway to send that Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network. So the coin gateway will have some sort of chain analysis software usually, and that will check the transaction if that address is listed in some scam, if it's a blacklisted address or not. So based on the new rules that will apply to cryptocurrency exchanges, it's a recommendation for the G7 countries. All exchanges have to not only carry each user's information when a transaction is moving from one exchange to another, but they also have to store the transaction for, I don't know the exact amount of time back, but they have to store it for some time so they can go back and see who has sent the money. Yeah, the KYC is now being rolled out to decentralized exchanges as well. Okay, so what are P2P exchanges? P2P exchanges are actually peer-to-peer exchanges. They are not, well, I can say that they are more decentralized. You can say that they are truly decentralized because no third party is involved. So for example, we have BISC. Using BISC, we can send we can actually buy and sell Bitcoin directly over the Tor network. But even if you're using BISC, it is still possible to figure out some information about the transaction. So that is possible because there are certain patterns we can look for in the traffic. If we were to intercept the Tor traffic or communication, we can look for certain patterns and find out more about that particular transaction. Some of them are listed here. Yeah. So, yeah, there's an example. If we can write snort rules to detect traffic inside BISC network, but we still will need to set up a fake Tor node or intercept the traffic in order to be able to detect that that Bitcoin transaction is coming from a BISC node. Yeah, so let's go further. Yeah, okay. So there is a challenge with tracing the Bitcoin blockchain. So the first thing is that the privacy coins, for example, Monero, they're actually obfuscating the amount which is sent. So we don't know. It's very hard to trace Monero transactions. But still, Monero is not widely used on the darknet. It's still Bitcoin. And CoinJoin. So CoinJoin is a technique which is used by Bitcoin. Well, it's not part of Bitcoin, but using CoinJoin, a wallet, you can actually masquerade the traffic. You can mix that traffic, so you are not able to determine which path the traffic has taken. So CoinJoin is used to bypass software like chain analysis. So here we have an example of a transaction which is without CoinJoin. And here we have an example of a transaction with CoinJoin. CoinJoin basically mixes the transaction, so it breaks the links. It breaks the link in the Bitcoin blockchain, so you cannot know exactly which path the transaction has taken. So, but there is another thing with the CoinJoin. If it's not implemented properly, we have had some wallets like Wasabi wallet, which reuse the UTXO, the unspent transaction output. Then the implementation of CoinJoin is not that good, so we can still detect that transaction because some of actually the mix is not done properly. That's the reason. So with a Samurai wallet is actually the one that implements CoinJoin in a way that makes tracing the origin of the transaction very hard on the Bitcoin network. So, and there's another thing with the private full node. If you run your own Bitcoin private full node, you also achieve privacy. So, for example, if you're using BISC with your own private full node, that also helps from a privacy perspective, to make it harder to detect the transaction. And we have the Lightning Network, which is coming. Lightning Network is a second layer protocol. It will maybe add some privacy features in Bitcoin, but we don't know when. So, but most probably it will be optional privacy features in Bitcoin that is coming in future, but we don't know when. So that will also make it harder for us to trace the origin of a transaction. Yeah, so the users who don't run their own full node are also exposed to a privacy leak. This is from the BISC documentation, that there was actually a bug there. So a full spying node will find out easily that all the addresses created by the wallet are from one wallet and belongs to the same owner. So we can actually set up a fake full node on the Tor network to spy on the BISC traffic. So I don't know if it's done already or not, but there is a vulnerability, as you can see. So even when using BISC or other decentralized exchanges, it still leaves traces on the blockchain, so you can still find out information. Okay, so by combining the chain analysis with passive DNS and alternative coin wallet explorers and darknet, we can gather forensic evidence and relate different crimes. So I've shown an example of a case earlier where I used this technique. But usually we need much more information than that to actually determine if someone is actually behind that crime or not. But it will lead us a long way by combining the information using open source tools. Yeah, that's what I had actually. So if there are any questions, I can, open for them.